not even the other side of the office, just that. And you're going to be talking about Gabber today, aren't you?
Yes, exactly.
Whenever you're ready, Jay.
So we're recording you? Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Rainey, PhD student in digital civics here at OpenLab. Today I'll be talking about my work, talking about Gabber specifically, a digital tool designed for everyday people to engage them in qualitative research practices. But before that, I'll talk briefly about what motivates my work and the sort of guiding principles we've come up with based on research for digital systems like Gabber to accommodate these non-professionals engaging in professional qualitative research. So every day, people are increasingly capturing audio-video media, both as individuals, as organisations like Andy Dye's work, where they're capturing it for feedback within the organisation, or through involvement in research. However, whenever they're capturing these large sets of audio-video media, they basically don't have the skills to actually make sense of that data. They're just capturing it's going into a black box somewhere, and that's all they're doing with it. But if we look at researchers who, for a very long time now, have been engaging with qualitative research, they have the tools and the skills to actually make sense and reuse that media. So how do they go about doing this? Traditionally, they'll transcribe the data, they'll then do analysis on this textual transcription, and then they'll write a report based on the insights that they found through this process. However, this transcription process reduces this audio or video media to text, which removes the nuances of voice or the visuals that enrich this media. So that's something we're really keen to keep within such systems like Gabber. Whenever they're doing analysis, typically they'll do it individually, and then they'll go and meet each other to talk about the codes that they've applied and why they've done that, to try to garner the themes across these groups. So that's their sort of approach to collaboration. I mean, there's many different ways of doing it, but that's just the common approach. In order to do analysis, because of this potential scale of these projects, they use these specialised softwares, which you're probably all familiar with. So this is just an image of Deduce and Nvivo. And within these, you can do tons of stuff. You can get descriptive statistics of the code you've applied to the content. You can even import audio media directly and work with that there. But actually, few researchers use that functionality, which is in part due to the complexity of these interfaces. So that's how researchers do it. And if we want to map that to support these everyday users, that's just not feasible because these software cost a lot of money, and actually if you've used them, you probably need lots of training to actually just pick them up and do something meaningful with them. And you need expertise in sort of thematic code and this analysis in order to do something. And on top of that, what they produce is a written report, which of course is very useful, but for ordinary people who would also have the skills to do that, actually sharing that and easily just get an idea of what the data is about is not possible. So based on these problems, that's just like the cliff notes of them, it's a lot more. And a couple of case studies we've done with Gabber, we've come up with 3 guiding principles for digital systems to engage everyday people in the practices of qualitative research. So what we're aiming for essentially is to support these non-professionals being more professional in their approach to how they make sense of and reuse this media. So first of all, we want to support them initiating the research questions, the things that they're interested in, to give them control over the things that the sort of research projects, the research topics. They're the ones that should drive this. And another important part of initiating is once you capture it, well, it would be very inconsistent if everyone went out and did interviews however which way they wanted. So instead there has to be a structure there so that all the data that comes back is in a consistent format. So this process actually maps to the sort of qualitative research approach, where you capture data, you get ethics approval, you go capture the data, make sense of it, then you write a report. What we're trying to do here is simplify that for ordinary people. So after we've set up this sort of project, and then we want to capture data about it, ownership is fundamental. So people that capture the data, they own the data. If you want to use it, you should have to consent for them to actually use it. But what's really important here is whenever that data is used, they get attribution for their contributions, even though they may have just been part of the conversation. Just making that clear through the process, how they've sort of contributed to this whole process is critical. And the analysis process in qualitative research is, we could train lots of people to do that, but that's extremely complex. Something that actually is quite familiar is tagging and this sort of idea of linkifying content, where on Twitter you can just hashtag something. Just doing that with the original source data is something we're actually really interested in. But actually what's more important here is the people that are capturing the data, they're the experts in the things that they're capturing about, right? So they know the domain, they should be the ones that are doing the analysis, doing or engaging with this content. And then finally, although written reports could be produced, this whole process is about engaging with the original content. So it'd be interesting to see how we can then represent that content in perhaps a different way. So if everyone's engaged with sort of this sense-making process, how can you create little snippets to sort of present and represent all that media? This is what we've set out and learned from sort of deployments of Gabber, but this applies to other tools that are trying to engage people in this process. So now let's talk a bit about, I'll do a walkthrough of Gabber. This is the sort of system which we've designed to support everyday people engaged in these practices. So there's sort of two interaction points of Gabber. You've got the website, and that's where you can create and manage projects. So those are like your big research objectives. We're interested in capturing data like that. You can discover other projects because it's all public, so you can go in and you can say, oh, actually, that's really interesting. But what's really important here is on the website, you can also do this collaborative sense making. It's not me going away and applying codes. It's me looking at the content, applying codes, opening discussions with others around the content. And the application is where you can see all these research projects. You can discover ones that perhaps weren't there yesterday and have just been created. And you can contribute to those projects. So you can select one, and off you go, you can collect data for it. So what I'll do now is I'll walk through creating a Gabber project and just give you a feel of what it's like. So whenever you're creating a project, you give it a name and a description, and that's what everyone's going to see whenever they discover your project. What it is you're capturing, and probably why you're capturing that data. But what's fundamental whenever you create a project is the topics. Those are the things that structure the conversation. Those are essentially like research questions. What are we interested in having in this conversation? And if we map back to those guiding principles, that's the sort of first key one. We want consistency in all this data that we're capturing, because, yeah. And another fundamental thing is privacy, because I know what you're thinking. If you're going and capturing sensitive data, obviously you don't want that to be in the public domain. So you can simply make the project private, and then only members of the project will see it. So now we've created a project. You want to allow people to participate. So if it's public, anyone could discover it and start recording conversations based on the topics you've created. However, you can also invite people to the project. You just put in the name and email address, and you give them a role. So the role is a participant. That's just they can see the project, they can contribute to it. A researcher, they can see the project, but they can see all of the conversations that have been recorded. And we'll come back to this sort of consent process or an administrator, and that's where they can modify the project. So they can update the topics, the research questions, and so on. So now we've created the project. People can download the app, they can see all the projects that have been made public or the ones they're a member of, so they can discover them. And then they can say, okay, I want to contribute to that project. So I choose the Red Cross present, select that, and I'm here with Rosie. So I say, okay, I want to have this conversation with Rosie about her experiences, put in her name, her email, and that's who we're going to have in this conversation. Next process is, well, we're having this conversation, and it's a bit like informed consent. Do you want your conversation to be used in research? And by whom? And in this case, the project owner is the Red Cross, so we can see that. And that's just for it to be used in research, because there's two forms of consent. One is for the research, the next one is how do I want other people in this Gabber platform to gain access to this data? So in this case, do I want it to be public, or do I want only Rosie and myself to be able to see this content? In this case, we would select public. So those topics that we created before, they appear in a list, and as soon as you select one, conversation starts going. The idea is you just put this device down in front of, between one another, and you just have this open, informal conversation. Once we move on to a different topic, I'll select that, and that means we're talking about that. And that's very important, as we'll see in a second. So now we've had this conversation, it's uploaded to the web. Because I've put Rosie's email in, and of course I've already logged in, we're both notified and we receive an email, which is a link to the consent process. Although we provided consent before, we can then now modify the consent, in case we said something we think, oh, I didn't mean to say that. So we don't want that data to be public anymore, we can make it private and so forth. This also allows us to revisit the audio recording, and for the first currently 24 hours, it's only the people in the conversation that can listen to the recording, because that way they always have the option to change the consent if they choose to. So assuming Rosie and I either didn't read our email, or we said, okay, actually we want this to be public, now it's available. We'd go onto the website, and there's sort of three parts to the website. In the main area, you've got the content, so that's all the projects, all the sections, all the annotations. It depends, which part of the site you're on. On the left, you've got the filter options. So if I'm only interested in the conversations where they're talking about a certain topic, I'd select that, and it reduces that list from potentially thousands to a few. So it's built for scale. Then on the right, we have some metadata about the project. So this is where people can see, okay, we have all these conversations or sessions. What are they for? Well, in this case, it's for the Red Cross project, created by this person, and those are the members of it. Within Gabber, we've really taken into account sort of privacy and ethics. So in this, whenever you sign up, although you put your full name and your email address, the members of the project, their names are never revealed. They're just given an icon. So in this case, this person, well, you can see over there, someone has a chess icon, they're given all sorts of different icons. The only time you see someone's name is whenever that person is recording the conversation. So I had a conversation with Rosie, my name would appear there. So now we have those sessions, we're interested in, okay, I want to view that one. So we simply click it, and the idea of sort of the layout of Gabber is you've got this root project, it's essentially like a folder, then inside that you've got all these conversations, and then you can basically go deeper into that specific conversation. So actually what's really cool about Gabber is we've had this conversation, and we've said, okay, we're talking about this topic and that topic as the conversation evolves. And what that simply does is it just marks out the areas of the conversation in which we're talking about that topic. So actually, in this case, it's actually in order. So this person has talked about this topic and that, and you can see that it's mapped to the colours. But you don't necessarily have to do them in that order.
Can you have multiple? Can one section have multiple codes?
No, so this is, whenever you and I have had this conversation, we talked about that topic in the first place. You can apply the topic or the code many times throughout the conversation, certainly.
But as in like a section of the conversation, could that have multiple topics?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So the whole point of this interface is the sort of sense-making process. We've had all our conversations that have been uploaded to the web. We get notifications saying, okay, they're uploaded and they're ready for people to engage with. We can go on and we can listen to it, but as we're listening to it, we think, oh, that's really interesting. So what we can do is we can create a comment and that's overlaid onto the audio. It's actually a bit difficult to see here, but you can just imagine that I would be like, oh, I think that's really interesting. And it pops up an area. In this case, I just write my textual comment, and I can do like hashtag and apply a code to that. But once I've created this comment, the participants in the conversation all receive a notification so that they can then open this discussion further. And then much like you essentially create a thread, so you can comment on comments and so forth. So now we have engaged in sort of caption process. We've got consent for this data and how it's going to be used. All the communities engage with a whole vast array of sort of data. Now we're interested in, well, how can we actually represent and meaningfully use that content as researchers would do through a written report. The whole point of Gabber is using this audio media throughout the whole process. So unfortunately I don't have any nice screenshots of the current interface because it's towards the end of development, but essentially the idea is, in the center you would have all the annotations, so all those commented sections of the audio in one place, so that reduces potentially thousands of hours of audio down to just the bits that are clearly interesting to people because they commented on that. And what you can do is you can say, okay, I want to again filter those. I want to put all those interesting parts in one place and create a playlist from that. So you take all those small 10, 20-second annotations of audio and you put it in one place, and that creates a playlist. And what that does is it gives you a sense of this large data set by only having to listen to 2 or 3 minutes. But what's really great about this is you could then share that on social media, or you could share it in email because it's so small and lightweight. That means you can consume it in 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever the playlist is, in comparison to an 80-page written report where you have to distribute that via email or even Twitter or whatever. No one's really going to have time to read that. Well, especially not for these sort of everyday people. So that was the sort of Gabber workflow. That's where we are as a sort of technology and idea. Now I'd just like to talk about it in practice. What does this actually look like when people are using it? Well, not what it looks like, how is it actually used, at scale in particular. So we're currently working with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, or the FRC. For those who don't know, they're a massive humanitarian and development Well, they do lots of humanitarian development work globally in sort of disaster zones, and it depends. But it's a volunteer network. But what's really interesting here is they have 70 million volunteers. They've got tons of volunteers, and throughout 2017 to 2020, they're they essentially need to write a report that'll outline what the organisation is going to be like for 2030. So they wanted to do a strategic vision of how the organisation will be. What they're really interested in doing is incorporating the experiences of people on the ground, their volunteers, their staff, into this report so they can actually understand the real problems people are having so that they can address those. So from the Red Cross's perspective, what they would absolutely love is to have a 10-minute interview with all of these 17 million volunteers. But if they had all this data, again, just like a device artwork, what can they meaningfully do with it? Because at that scale, it's going to be extremely tricky. And essentially what we're thinking is, well, what we're doing is we're going to deploy Gabber and let the volunteers go and capture this content and then engage with it themselves, so sort of divide and conquer. And in doing so, we'll create playlists, and then we'll sort of see the problems overall within the organisation. So the approach we're taking is, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Howard's What's Future game, but they essentially deployed a game through WhatsApp that everyone has installed in the phone across the IFRC network and had huge uptake. But actually what Dan found that in order to engage such a large sort of group of people across sort of regions and countries, it was best conducted with focus, boundaries and constraints. So you could run Gabber and just leave it open, run it forever and ask people to create conversations when they want. But instead what we're doing is saying, okay, we've got 3 weeks and this is what we're doing each week. So the first week, we're going to have volunteers go out and have conversations with other volunteers and also with staff around the topics that IFRC are interested in capturing conversations about. So the problems they're having, what's actually really important to them. So now I've got this mass amount of conversations from volunteers and staff across the first week. In the second week, we're saying, okay, we have all these volunteers. What we'd like is for yourself to engage with or to listen to content from other volunteers in different societies. The society is a bit like a branch. So there's one in the UK, there'll be one in Sweden, one here and there. But actually how they operate is slightly different. So being able to see their approach to, in this case, migration or how they're dealing with certain problems, will allow the volunteers to reflect and then engage with the content in this sense-making process. So now they've annotated and marked up all that audio, what we're saying is, well, in the final week, it's all just set out about creating these playlists from the content. We want to represent all these experiences in really short snippets based on what people have thought was most interesting. And then from that, the IFRC is going to take all these playlists and all the metadata throughout this process and use that to inform their strategy 2030. Oh yeah, that's right. So if you're planning to use audio, if you're going to record audio, either yourself, your collaborators, for your own research, and then Gabber is really appropriate for you. Currently it's designed for scale, it's robust, and it's in 6 languages, so depending on the sorts of organisations, if you're working internationally, it'll be extremely suitable for you. If you're not, you're probably going to be in the future, so if you just come grab me then, yeah, and we can talk about it, and that's everything. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah?
I really like it. It seems really interesting. Though I think initially when I was thinking, it's like maybe like an alternative to Nvivo, but
yeah,
it strikes me that it's a kind of a different way of doing qualitative research more broadly, in the sense that I think, is it possible to go back to the slide where you showed the kind of Gabber?
Which one?
That one there.
Yeah, sure.
Like, see, it seems like the participant has always got access to that, and do they then see the way you've coded it up as well?
Yes, but yes. So
is that I'm just thinking, like, just from my own perspective, the type of qualitative research I've done in the past. Obviously, if I'm making critical analysis of what participants have said and saying, well, it's interesting they say that because it shows that they have a total disregard for the health of their customers. If I've interviewed a takeaway owner,
yeah,
I don't really want them kind of well, I don't want them involved in that kind of analytical process. I mean, it's like fine for them to sort of see the audio possibly and sort of review it and check what they've said and they're happy. Exactly, to be able to, because I know we talk about sort of withdrawing consent, and it's quite a, it's never happened to me in the past, but it's probably quite a challenging process for that to actually happen. But if they've got direct access and say, actually, in hindsight, considering what I said, I would like to withdraw consent, so that would be fine. But I don't want them saying, okay, this is...
No, absolutely. Well, Gabber's designed to invite and engage the people that is involved in this capture process to actually engage with the content. So in this case, it's potentially unsuitable if you're going to be... It's not that it's unsuitable if you're critical, because you want to have dialogue with this person. You want to get their perspectives and opinions on what you're saying, right? Because you want to engage them in understanding the content. But yeah,
is that something you want to serve later? I mean, because obviously it has all the tools to be able to do that. And
yeah,
you can
exactly.
restrict access in certain ways.
So currently you could set it up such that the participants that are involved, who capture content, wouldn't be able to see the comments, for example.
Yeah.
But then that would take away from our overall agenda, which is engaging them in this sort of sense-making.
That's what I mean. So it seems like it's a kind of an alternative.
Yeah, an alternative application of it.
Yeah.
But it's
okay.
available if you're interested in that anyway, because you could customize it that way. I agree.
But just in response to Louis, but I think that even if you are being critical, you'd still have to validate that with your participants, and that did I have this assumption right? And you wouldn't phrase it in that they have this regard, but they might just say, well, no, we care about our customers' health, but it's not our priority. That validation process is something that we should be doing in qualitative research. And this just streamlines it and makes it easier to have conversations rather than us presenting back, oh, this is what we think as researchers, is it correct or
no,
not?
absolutely.
Whereas this one's actually more of a dialogue in the validation process.
Because in that case, what we're trying to do is open up the conversation, even if it is critical or if it is sensitive, data. We want to be able to engage the people that are collecting it in conversation around it, because actually it depends what you're doing, right? But the people that you were talking about, restaurant owners, they're probably experts. Well, they are experts in owning restaurants, and they've probably been doing it for years. So getting their opinions on things they've said in the past in this reflective way could be quite useful also.
Yeah, maybe, but I think this is that's kind of a broader philosophical thing. I think, like, in terms of if I have a conversation with someone, I want them to be brutally honest with me, and sort of if there's somehow, if you're saying, right, setting out thinking, right, okay, we're going to review this, we're going to come back over, I think that's going to have, I mean, it'd be interesting if you said, right, okay, I'm going to interview in the standard semi-structured interview process, I'm going to anonymise it and no one else is going to see the data apart from me and the research team. Or you're going to see it and other potential research participants are going to see it, it's going to be part of this broader dialogue. That's clearly going to influence what people are going to say to you. So I'm not saying that one way is right or one way is wrong. What I'm saying is that it's going to have implications in terms of what comments are made to you. I'm not kind of saying what it might be, but it would certainly have an impact.
Yeah.
I guess sort of related point really. I guess does it come down to the audience as well? Because you've framed it within a sort of research background as this tool can be useful for research, but actually the example that you've used is charity. It seems to me that area, sort of similar to Andy's scorecard stuff, might be another very big potential area, and not just charities, councils or... No,
absolutely, and that's sort of what I outlined.
In which case it's not sort of Nvivo, which is not it, is it? It's sort of a traditional consultation process or something.
Yes, exactly. Because Gabber is quite flexible, it could be used by researchers to conduct their own research as an alternative to Nvivo that could really speed up, the interview process, for example. But actually what we're aiming for, like you say, is engaging organisations to capture content from their service users or the volunteers or whoever, and actually being able to make sense of that at scale particularly. Because if you capture, tens of, potentially like hours and hours of audio, there's currently not an easy way to sort of make sense of that data. Yeah, thanks. Rosie? Hi.
So you said quite accurately, like when audio is kind of collected, it's just kind of like deposited into this kind of black box. Sometimes the fact that some organisations kind of don't know what to do with it. There's also kind of like a side effect of that in the sense that sometimes it's a black box because it's almost too much effort for these organisations to do things with it. It's not the fact that they don't want to, or sometimes they do, sometimes that's your role as a researcher. It's like, great, we've captured all this data, now it's your role, your effort to be able to do it. I was just wondering, how do you see Gabber as reducing those kind of barriers for organisations to be able to do that on their own?
No, absolutely. And so it's been primarily designed for ordinary people, but particularly organisations, especially like charities and NGOs, who may not have previous experience, working with data in this way. Because of course, if you're capturing this data, like Andy Dye's working with the local charity, capturing feedback from the service users, they're really interested in what they're saying. They've got all this data and they don't know how to actually understand what they're saying. So what we've done here is try to design something that they can easily just pick up. With a little bit of training, they can go and whenever they're having these conversations, it just structures that. Because of that, you can then because of how they're uploaded, like almost instantly, you can then see the content straight away and start engaging with it. You don't really need expertise to sort of listen back and say, oh, that part's really interesting, and then from that, you can pull just the interesting parts out, and then use that in like board meetings or whatever, depending on the needs of the organisation. Does that answer your question?
Do you want one?
Yeah.
Sorry. What if you want to have an unstructured interview? You haven't decided the topics or the questions before.
So, okay, that would be fine. You could just create a project, right, with
so you
one.
Just create, and then you haven't got the tags along the thing.
No, you would need the tags because you
Yeah.
need one like at the very start. So you could just have one called. Hold on, where are we? Yeah. So basically, you need the tags in order for it to be displayed in this way.
Right, but you can tag it in different ways, so that might not be like, these are my structured question interviews. It's like more like, this is who's speaking, or these are some themes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something like that. So you could use it still.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You could even just say, you could use it exactly like that. So you could say, like if you're having a conversation with someone and you're interested in, like the ideas that they're coming across, you could have a topic which is idea, like to do, because you're speaking with your manager and he's setting you all these tasks, and maybe you just want to go back and revisit that because he speaks too fast, whatever. You can do that. So it's very flexible in how it can be configured, and it's, as I say, totally free, open source, and robust, so that it can be potentially useful for anyone recording audio conversations.
Just a simple one. Can you download the audio or snippets of the audio as well?
Technically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, we haven't designed an interface for that. The reason being is we want to keep all the data within the system, because through that it generates metadata, which is quite useful.
Yep.
Because one thing that we're interested in, which I'll just touch on briefly now anyway, is throughout the Gabber process we capture all this interesting sort of metadata or power data about who's seen what and who's engaged with what. And through that we can then say, actually this process has been extremely transparent and rigorous because if we've created a playlist and all that media is only coming from one interview, if it's set of 100, then it's not very representative of that media. So it's better to keep the content within the system until the very end, because then when you have a playlist, you can download that. And those are just the chunks. And that's, as I say, that's under construction, that's what we're working on.
Cool.
Because of course you'd want those insights perhaps to put into your report or whatever.
Yeah, I was just thinking like in terms of often, I'm thinking like the people I work with, there might be snippets of that audio for use in videos, for example. So
yes, exactly, and that's how some organisations that I've worked with have also used it. And also within this other interface, we're thinking about, because these automatic transcription services are not quite there, but they're getting there. And incorporating that also within this playlist interface. So whenever you export the media, you also export transcripts. That way you can share it on social media, because not a lot of the platforms support audio so easily. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You look like you've got a question.
Yeah, so have you spoken to people like at the ethics board in Sage about implications for people's projects in terms of how they deal with data? Because just thinking, say, the issue of sort of giving opportunities for people to download audio, how secure is that? And obviously that has implications in terms of how you present your ethics, your consent form to research participants.
Yeah, sure. This is why we've configured this research consent process prior to the capture of the content, and also dynamically allowing participants to update their consent for the content whenever they'd like. The reason being is, of course, if you download the media, you don't like to send it to anyone and perhaps have went against these sort of ethics that the people had agreed to. But I can't really think of a solution to that right now, because if it is hosted on a website and people can engage with the content, so even now